The United States and the UK and Israel are wrong. We are right. Genocide is wrong. Murdering babies with 2,000-pound bombs is wrong. We're all faced with the awful question of, is this the new normal? Is genocide okay now? Do we no longer think that there is right and wrong? Whenever tyrants loomed, we always held in our esteem the ones who hold on to the dream, unflinching, while the bullies pose and fiddle on the hill. And I may joke a bit, and I may be smiling, but I'm dying inside. Do it. All we can do is do everything that we can every day to stand on the side of righteousness.
Welcome to the FloodGate podcast, brought to you by the Palestine Chronicle. We are here to engage with today's most pressing issues and unpack them beyond the cliches of mainstream media. I'm your host, Ramzi Baroud, and with me is the brilliant Romana Rubio, an Italian journalist and the managing editor of the Palestine Chronicle. Today's guest is the legendary Roger Waters, an icon for many around the world, but particularly for the Palestinian people, who see his powerful voice as an extension of their own, echoing their struggles from Gaza and the rest of occupied Palestine.
And introducing our guest today is not an easy task. Roger Waters is a living icon, one of the most influential musicians, songwriters, and artists of modern times, as well as a relentless advocate for the most vulnerable. Roger, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I would like to start a little bit conceptual here, Roger. You have been talking about the lack of respect for human rights conventions, particularly the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You've emphasized the utter betrayal of the universal principles that were meant to protect the most vulnerable, something that has been true throughout modern history. Decades ago, Hannah Arendt argued that while human rights are an admirable concept, the real issue is really about statelessness, or rather citizenship. Because Palestinians are stateless, they automatically seems to lose every political privilege they are supposedly granted under human rights conventions, including the Geneva Conventions. Looking at the current reality, do you think that we've made a mistake by focusing too much on the conceptual value of human rights at the expense of other values, political rights, citizenship, and that sort of thing?
Wow. Well, that's an interesting package to try and unpack right now. This is a complex issue, dealing as it does with the niceties of international law and so on and so forth. And as you say, the rights or non-rights of people depending upon whether they have a state or not. And as we know, the Palestinians don't. As we know, I don't think I know. Last year in 2024, on April the 18th, there was a draft resolution before the Security Council to finally welcome Palestine as a full member of the United Nations, that was vetoed inevitably and of course by the United States. It's strange you should be wanting to talk about this now, because I was a bit late coming to this meeting because I was working in the other room, and what I was working on was a speech, because I've been asked to speak to the anniversary in Yalta. There's a conference coming up on Thursday, and I've been asked to speak at it by Zoom. So I won't be in my T-shirt on that day. I'll probably wear a jacket, Ramsey, like you. I may eschew the tie in the same way that you do, but I will definitely have my Palestinian pin on the lapel, on the lapel. And the whole speech is about exactly the question that you have asked me here. And And I'm not going to make that speech, now, today. But I have touched on a little bit of it that I think may be important. And the bit that I think may be important is that it's just possible that the extreme barbarity of the Israeli genocide on the people of Palestine may prove to be the Achilles heel in their notion of ethno and religious supremacy over the rest of us. And if that proves to be the case, then it may lend power to the people of the world to have some effect on what is going on in Palestine, and to immediately move the United Nations or the governments of the world or our leaders in the West to in a position where they, well, of course there has to be a Palestinian state. It's so self-evident and so obvious. And apart from anything else, it was already agreed on votes in the United Nations back in 1947 and 1949. 181 and 194 are the most relevant resolutions. But if you go back and look at the history of that, you go, well, why did nothing happen? And then you get into the questions that you're asking me this morning, and the questions that Hannah Arendt was asking, back in those post-war days. So we wake every morning in a frenzy of what are we doing today, to move this forward. And it's a very difficult question, and it's one that we all wrestle with, but not for very long, because all of us, those of us who actually care about human rights, we all find ourselves every morning in the same position. We're going, well, why don't people have rights? And this is exactly what you bring up. So there's no short answer to the question that thank you very much, laid in my lap this morning. All I can tell you is I've thought of nothing else for the last week since I've been writing this speech to deliver to the great and good in Yalta on Thursday morning.
And we will be coming back to this particular point, Roger, because we did interview Ilan Pappé very recently, and he did speak about the undoing of Zionism for various reasons, and we are going to touch on that again. So there is that hopeful element as well. Rumana, you have a question.
Yes, about a year and a half ago, you wrote, it was just a few days after the start of Israel's genocide, and you wrote an article for the Palestine Chronicle, and I want to read just a short passage here. The scream of each bomb that falls on Gaza is the dying scream of a failed state. My heart is heavy. Please stop. So I know it may seem redundant, but I think it is important we speak about this. How do you assess that call for action now after the genocide and the killing of over 50,000 Palestinians?
Where to start? The heaviness of our hearts increases every day, and we have to find ways to lighten it, because we're all faced with the awful question of, is this the new normal? Is genocide okay now? Do we no longer think that there is right and wrong, that there is good and evil in the world? Are we content to live in the schoolyard with the bully and just to do his bidding and whatever he says, and if we don't, he'll kill us? Is gangsterism the way forward, which we are seeing being absolutely avowed by the likes of Donald Trump, for instance, and Benjamin Netanyahu? They are saying, yeah, it is. This is how it works, and this is how it should work. And when we or people who were representing our countries at the time signed up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we had our fingers crossed behind our back. We didn't mean any of it ever at any point. And so this is the, well, yeah, I could share this, because this has been my thinking, is this. We're living at the end, in the last bit of 400 years of, or 500 years of European settler colonialism all over the world. So it doesn't matter if you were English or French or Portuguese or Spanish or whatever. We pushed off to the Americas and to the Far East and whatever and murdered everybody and stole everything that they had. And that's what we did. And that is our past. But it's not something that we ever want to admit to. So that I've been writing about Narcissus and staring into the pool at our own reflection. And so it may be in the Narcissus pool that we discover our own Achilles heel, which is our sense of gestalt shame for our last few hundred years of history. And in order to keep on getting away with it, like, for instance, successive American governments have for the last 300 years in the United States, where I've lived for the last 20 years anyway, they've figured out how to get beyond it just by lying and lying and lying and lying. And that's what Israel's doing as well. So the two, and that's what the UK is doing, and that's what France is doing, and Holland and Norway and Sweden and all of the vassal states in Europe. They're all doing the same thing. They are lying through their teeth. They're pretending one thing and doing the other. So so the question that Ramsey brought up at the beginning is fundamentally important, because they pretend that they care about human rights when we know they don't give a shit about human rights, because their actions speak louder than their words. And that we can tell from their actions that they have absolutely no interest, that they believe in the religious dogma from the ancient scripts of the Old Testament or the Hebrew or the Torah or whatever, that God is vengeful and he's also very possessive and he cares about land. And if you believe in him, it's yours. And nobody else has any right to life or liberty or an opinion or anything. Well, if you can believe that arrant nonsense, sorry to use your name in vain, well, you'll believe anything. But an enormous number of people, this is one of the real problems. The Abrahamic religions and the text upon which many people, and I'm not going to start knocking people who are praising Allah or following Jesus or whatever they want to be. But I'm a bit of a believer in the words of Malcolm X, who back in 1964 one day said, leave your religion in the closet when you come out to do the work of the political work that we have to do to organize our world. Your religion is your own business. It has to have nothing to do with any political decisions that are ever made about anything. Well, this is obviously anathema to the Christian Zionists in the United States, and also to the settler colonialist end of Israeli society. I'm not going to condemn all Israelis. I know Gideon Levy, I know Ronnie Barker now. They're out spraying, well, Gideon isn't, but Ronnie's out there spraying Elbit systems with red paint. He left Israel years and years ago, having, I think, been one of the founders of Boycott from Within back in those days. So I have no brief with anybody who judges anybody by their religion, or I would have to say, except when it's a manifestation of how you feel about their government's policies, by their nationality. I've got no problem with somebody being an Israeli. My problem is with the policies of their government, because they have nothing to do with any of the conversations that human beings have had since the dawn of civilization. Through all that stuff in France in the 18th century about getting rid of the divine right of kings and so on, we've done all that. Okay, we've had Hannah Arendt. We've seen all the writing. We know what the truth is, but the trick is to recognize the truth and to recognize the love in our own hearts and to hold on to love and truth in the face of the nonsense spouted by the Donald Trumps and Netanyahus of this world, who are raging, psychotic gangsters who want to steal all the sweets from all the pockets of all the other little kids in the schoolyard. That's all it is. And it's as simple as that. So how do we get this across? But you know what the great thing is, Ramsey, or Fire, is that every day on my phone, you know, I look and see what's happening, and I follow Palestine Chronicle, obviously, and Deep Dive, and blah blah blah, and the Grey Zone, and lots of alternative media. So I see them. So this morning, what was it there? It's that Holocaust survivor in London. He's 87 years old. He's going every single Saturday and marching in the street, and he's just been arrested by the Nazi police in London. My home, my country, the country that I'm a citizen of. I keep expecting to be arrested every time I go. If I go back there, when I'm in the airport, people say, well, they won't arrest you because you're too big a name and it would cause a big stink. But they're arresting Kit Clarenberg and my friends and developer, and I won't start naming all the names on, you know, Article 4 of the or 12 of the Terrorism Act, and all done on the basis of the lies that they tell about Hamas. What? You've been occupied? Your land has been stolen from you since in 1948, and you're not allowed to resist the occupation. You have to be called a terrorist if you resist the terrorizing occupation of your lands by an invading people. Whoa. Of course, you know, it's very difficult not to start raging. But
Yeah.
those millions standing in the streets alongside that Holocaust survivor, Rabo, I can't remember his name. Anyway, good for you, my friend. I'm so glad that you're doing that every Saturday. I'm so proud of you. And Mahmoud Khalil, you know, the kid who, or he's not a kid, he's a grown man, graduate student who organized the anti-genocide protests at Columbia that they're now trying to suggest are anti-Semitic. They're not. They're nothing to do with anti-Semitism. They're anti-genocide. They're pro-human rights, and we all know that. But so this battle that's goes on in the media and the press, the battle for our hearts and minds, is incredibly frustrating because it's so clear what's right and what's wrong. The United States and the UK and Israel are wrong. We are right. Genocide is wrong. It's so self-evidently obvious. Murdering babies with 2,000-pound bombs is wrong. Even murdering the leaders of political factions that you don't agree with 2,000-pound bombs is wrong. Nasrallah's death in Lebanon a few months ago, whenever they dropped 6 2,000-pound bombs on a residential high-rise, you know, building place because they knew he was somewhere in those. So they dropped 6 2,000-pound to kill one man because he was inconvenient to them, because he was a brave man and he was a very clever man, and he was running a very, very a wonderful organization. Hezbollah is a great organization, guy. It's most of its mandate is social. It's not a warlike organization. It's an organization of the people to look after the people of Lebanon and support them. Of course, they have to defend themselves against the ragings of the insane regime in Israel. But this all comes back to the Holy Writ notion. And I know I will get into a lot of hot water for bringing that up, but it's so fundamentally important.
And I just wanted to bring it because you spoke about governmental policies, Roger. Now, the bombs that were dropped on Nasrallah and dropped on Gaza for over the course of 15 months, they were issued by the Biden administration. the U.S. government during the democratic era of Biden, sustained, defended, supplied, even took part in the genocide directly against the Palestinians. There was some hope, at least among, kind of a section of society, that maybe Trump is going to be very businesslike. He doesn't want a perpetual war in the Orwellian sense, and he wanted to just end the war. But here we are. The genocide is starting all over again in Gaza, and this time is funded, sustained, and defended and supported by the Trump administration. Is the solution coming from Washington? Are people wasting their time by hoping that Washington might change its policies? Well, where will the change come from?
Yeah, I think by and large they are wasting their time. But it's very difficult to let go of that idea. But you cannot have listened to watched what Trump has done, taking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from Sheldon, who's now dead, and Miriam Adelson to fill his war coffers that he can fight his elections. And let's not forget, from 2016 to 2020, he absolutely did their bidding. He did what he was told, and he will go on doing what he's told by the people who give him money. Because if that's the only thing I kind of like about Trump, is he's completely open, that he doesn't care about anything except lining his own pockets. Whether or not his supporters will ever figure this out and go, well, hang on a minute, the price of eggs hasn't gone down, or gas, or I still can't live. However much he's said he would fix it by getting rid of the immigrants and by supporting Israel and and annexing the West Bank and stealing the Golan Heights and invading Syria and Lebanon and all that stuff, it doesn't seem to have changed what's happening with my $10 that I'm desperately trying to get by on. Will they figure that out? I doubt it. They should have looked at the photographs from the inauguration and see it was like Trump, and then with him it was Zuckerberg and Bezos and Elon Musk. And was Gates there? Probably. It was just oligarchs. All he's going to do is make all the oligarchs, instead of them all having $200 billion, they'll all have $500 billion or $1 trillion. That's all they're doing. He's just stealing money from the people to give it to himself and Jared Kushner, whose plans to turn Gaza into a golf course, which he's open about. I mean, it's stunning. He's completely open about it. He says that's what I'm going to do. We'll get rid of the Palestinians. Jared Kushner had the brilliant idea. They can all go and live in the Negev desert. Oh, brilliant. Okay. And Trump thinks that he can send them all off to Egypt or Jordan or somewhere else. It doesn't matter. He couldn't care less, so long as they're not there, because he wants to bulldoze the whole thing flat and build a golf course, and a new Mar-a-Lago, where he can sit around with his mates, lauding it. And you sort of have to forgive him, because the people of America have elected this moron to be their commander-in-chief. But so, Ramsey, I only wish that there is a possibility that Trump might do a sudden U-turn and start applying the logic that he's applied to Ukraine to the question of, might it not be better if we didn't have Armageddon? Because at the moment, they're just heading directly to Armageddon, which this is the problem, that the Christian Zionists are gagging for Armageddon. They cannot wait for Jesus to come down and take them by the hand, and Mike Pence and the rest of them, and they'll go floating off to heaven, and all the Jews die, and all the Muslims die, and we all die. We burn in eternal damnation and a fiery misery for the rest of eternity, while they sit in heaven with Jesus. God knows what they're going to do. I can't imagine having a conversation with Mike Pence for 2 minutes, never mind for the rest of eternity. Jesus, I nearly took his name in vain then, but you notice I cut it off, and I'm sorry to laugh because it's not funny, except it is. But they believe this bullshit. They believe it. You know, it's how do these ancient scraps of paper get so much power? I know how they do, because they get adopted by the ruling class and they are used to keep us in our place. That's why Christianity has told us to turn the other cheek for the 1,000 years, 2,000 years. Just turn the other cheek. Oh, by the way, you're one of the lucky ones, because you're really poor, because we've taken everything you had and killed most of you. But that means you'll go to heaven. Yeehaw, yeah, good luck. Oh, thank you very much. What? It's brilliant. It was brilliant. It's been brilliant. And you only have to actually read the history of what the Christian church has done for the last 2,000 years to know that what I say is right. By and large, the Abrahamic religions have been a hugely malign influence on the lives of the whole human race all over the world for 2,000 years. And we haven't copped it yet, and we're still not. And it may completely destroy everything. There'll be nothing left. The only thing I hope is that if there is nothing left, and Elon Musk has escaped in his starship to what I hope that movie comes true, whatever it's called, and they all get eaten by ostriches when they land. What was that called? The film about the world being. Look at the sky, is it? Look up. Don't look up. It's called Don't Look Up. And at the end of it, the plutocrats all get in rockets and they fly for 1,000 years and they wake up and they get off and it's this beautiful planet and they get eaten by ostriches. Fantastic. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but and I may joke a bit, and I may be smiling, but I'm dying inside. I can't believe that I'm a human being. I can't believe that my race, the human race, is doing this to its brothers and sisters. No, and it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. In the moment, it's Palestine, but 100 years ago, it was the Congo, and it was Leopold II murdered like 40 million people or something, cutting their hands off because they weren't cutting rubber trees down quickly enough. Oh, cut his hands off. Jesus, Leopold, isn't that harsh? Rael Peck made that great film about it called Exterminate All the Brutes. When I watched that film, which was 5, 6, 10 years ago, I can't remember. I remember sitting there spellbound and thinking, Raoul, my son, you have done us all a huge favor. What a wonderful film. This tells it all, and people will watch it and everything will change. Nobody watched it. They couldn't, they don't want to watch that. They want to watch, I've forgotten her name now, the one who makes soft drinks with the Israelis, wiggling her bum in Marvel comic movies. They don't know, they're not interested in what's actually going on. Well, I am, and so are you two, obviously, and so are many of us. But so my dream is this, that the fact that there are billions of us in the world who have love and truth in our hearts may eventually make a difference. But it may only come about when the billions of us wake up and go, oh, hang on a minute. These arseholes who are starting all the wars and run the war industry and make fortunes out of it, because war is a racket, as Smedley Butler told us back in 1929 or whenever it was. Maybe when we all realize that, and we go, hang on a minute, be quiet to the local priest. Do not listen to the local priest, all right? No, I'm not, no. We can do that on Sunday. But from Monday to Saturday, or whenever it is, we have to fight the ruling class, because this is all organized to steal money from me and give it to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. That's all this is about. And it's the same in Israel, you dollops. It's all about stealing anything, mainly from the Palestinians now, because you're stealing all of their land and all of their furniture and all of their keys and all of their culture and all of their olive trees. All right. And you're consuming it with your disgusting rampages of psychotic power. Okay. But that's what it's about. It's all about stealing. And this is what we in the West will see when we look into the pool of Narcissus and see through the surface the reflection of our own past. We will see that that is who we have been. And we have to recognize that first, because the United States is just a bunch of, Irish and English and Italians and Poles and Germans and whatever who got together and murdered everybody so they could steal their land. And that's what it is. And so until we get that's why the United States supports Israel through everything, because the United States is Israel. The manifest destiny is no different than settler colonialism with the Torah in your hand. God tells me, we have to kill them because they're all vermin. Well, that's exactly what the Pilgrim Fathers believed when they landed in New England in 1640 or whenever, or way before that. Columbus, 1492, 200 years before.
Yeah. And all of this, like the screwed narrative and the horrors that you described, the 2,000 pound bombs on hospitals. And we see, on TV, journalists, when, Israeli officials talk about this, saying, haha, as if it was normal. So all of this has been accompanied by a massive propaganda machine. So the line has been drawn here, and Israel, its supporters, and its allies are doing everything in their power to sustain this genocide while silencing everybody, even the faintest voices, demanding an end to this mass extermination. So I would like to ask you, how do you see the role of intellectuals in this struggle? And of course, where do you place yourself as both an artist and an intellectual in the fight for justice in Palestine, but everywhere, globally?
I never think about that. I can't. I don't have room to think about my part in it or what. All I know is that I awake every morning with the absolute conviction that I have to do something today. And if I get to the end of the day and I haven't done something, then I don't sleep. Oh, I do sleep. I was lying then. I do sleep. Thank goodness I can sleep. But yeah, I'm 81 years old. To be 81 now and go, is this what they did? I mean, I watched it happen. It's not a coincidence that in 1982 I made a record called The Final Cut, which was basically a political attack on Margaret Thatcher and British colonialism, i.e. us going down and killing Argies as fast as we could. In a vein, in fact, I wrote an article about it at the time, and I think part of it says the only important thing in this conversation is that not one more life is lost on or is sacrificed on the altar of the colonial aspirations of long dead kings, which is what the Falklands is, or the Malvinas as they're called. And since then, I've been involved with the Malvinas because I got involved with a woman called Gabriela Cosifi, who was a journalist in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and together with a man called Jeffrey Cardozo, who was a British officer on Darwin after the Falklands. Anyway, cut a long story short, there were a bunch of dead Argies in graves, and nobody knew which grave they were in. And believe it or not, the mothers of these boys want to know which hole they're in so that they can go and put a bunch of flowers there, if they're allowed on the island at all by the Brits. So anyway, we cut a long story short, there were 127 of them. And I think there's only 3 missing now, whose names we don't know, and we don't know which holes they're in. But Gabby went all over Argentine, into the jungles, to talk to mothers who speak no Spanish. They only speak local dialect, and to convince them to do DNA tests so that blah blah, and they did. So now we know because of Gabby Kosifi, and I helped a bit. I went and met Kirchner when she was president, and she got behind it. And so this is what we need to be doing with our lives. Is that stuff? Hang on a minute. This old lady in Argentina, her son has been killed, and she's grieving for him. Let's all get together and help her find which hole his body's in so she can put a flower on it. It's not rocket science. And let's try not to have wars about the colonial aspirations of long-dead monarchs. But we are. That's what America is. America is actually us repeating and repeating and repeating the colonial aspirations of George III. Just because they rebelled against the monarch doesn't mean that they actually moved forward intellectually or politically or in terms of their capacity to be humane. My mother used to say that she went before the war to America. She said to me often, she's dead now, she's been dead about 15 years, but Roger, the Americans, they're not terrible people. They're very hospitable, many of them. They'll welcome you into their home. And I'm sort of vaguely thinking, well, yeah, but you are white, Mum. But we didn't go there, she said. But they are very, very naive. And I thought that was fascinating. And she's so right. The population of the United States of America is unbearably naive. Even the ones who sort of pretend to think often are. And I'm not going to name names because I'm not that stupid. Well, I'm rambling now, but yeah, there was a poem. There's a poem I wrote. I wrote it in 2004, so it's 20 years old now, and it's called "Why Cannot the Good Prevail?" And I wrote it upon the re-election of GW in 2004, and it's basically, I should pull it up really, but I'm not sure I can without losing. Okay. Yeah, I will. I'm going to. Hang on a minute. If you've got time, because we can always edit.
Go for it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just going to press. Now I can move that down a bit. Here we go. Okay. This won't take a second because I know where it is. It's in something called poems. All right, are you ready? Can you still see me?
Yes.
Here we go.
Yes, we do.
So this is it. And in fact, I've renamed it. It's just called America 2004. I'll read it to you. Yeah, I don't need those. It's big letters. Why cannot the good prevail? Here in America, there is at heart a people just and true, open, sometimes to the point of ridicule. Good neighbors to rebuild the barn. The doctor's note of Western legend carried forth beyond the grave. I knew your pa, enough. In caucuses across the land, deliberate they'll always stand, defenders of the Rosenbergs, symbolic of that yearning to be better than before. They never will give up their brother to the grocer's cold machine, belt welts livid from the strong arm of the law. On campuses, in boardrooms, over giving thanks and pumpkin pie, on hustings in committee rooms, whenever tyrants loomed, we always held in our esteem the ones who hold on to the dream, unflinching while the bullies pose and fiddle on the hill. Has commerce so reduced the free that, blinded like a tot, contaminated by the dog shit in the grass. We blunder, slaves to humbug and this Texan dynasty. No, beyond the grip of trade, the young, strain, beautiful and proud, the hoarfrost breath of new blood needs but nudges from the old forgotten guard to scale the moral high grounds in the clouds. That's it.
Thank you so much for that.
Not at
Absolutely
all.
powerful.
Yeah, well, that's 20 years ago. You see, this is what drives me
It's
crazy.
still applicable, and sadly will be applicable for a long time.
Yeah, so where
Um,
is the young blood? And how hard do the old forgotten guard may have to nudge them before they even think about scaling the moral high grounds in the clouds? Why is it so difficult? You'd think that in our billions we would wake up tomorrow morning and go, "This is wrong." No, there's going to be a global strike. The working class will not allow this anymore. We are closing down all the shipping. You will stop making money because we're not going to help you make it, and you can't do it without us. And we're going to stop until you stop murdering people and stealing from us. You wouldn't think.
Roger, wouldn't you agree that there is some degree of awakening going on? I mean, when you
Yeah,
see countries, well, South Africa, it's kind of the obvious example, but numerous others, including small countries like Namibia, taking moral stances, going as far as trying to try Germany at the ICJ, and the global majority really beyond the global South. It hasn't, yes, the critical mass might have been reached, but it hasn't yet translated to anything political as of yet. Wouldn't you say that we are in the process of some kind of an awakening? How do you feel about this?
well, I hope so, Ramsey. I really hope so. When I was at my grammar school all those years ago, I once spoke in a debate in the debating society at school, only once ever, that I moved to. And it was, this house believes in the idea of world government, which is fascinating. So there I was as a 15-year-old speaking on behalf of that proposition. The idea, well, which is really, it's only exactly the same as standing up now and saying, I believe in international law. Oh, really? Well, we all do, don't we? Didn't we all? No, we didn't. We're not all signed up to the Rome Statute. And absolutely, Donald Trump and Elon Musk they don't believe in any law. They believe in fascism. They believe in black shirts and beating people up and murdering people and sending people to prison and deporting people. And so that's what they believe in. They have no interest in the law, except insofar as it serves them. So it's like the thing of human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Sign it, hands crossed behind back. I only actually believe in human rights for a chosen few, me and a couple of my friends. So yeah, it's there. So yes, of course. I wake up every morning and weep, but I also wake up every day and go, oh my God, we might be able to do something, because it's so obvious. The mask is off. The masks are all gone. The masked ball, which was the creation of the United Nations after the Second World War, is over. We now know that they didn't mean any of it, and they still don't. That's what the veto in the Security Council is all about. It's saying we don't give a fig for international law or for human rights. All we care about is our bank balance. That's it. And it's so you go, wow. So you could say, where's our Mao Zedong? Where's our Vladimir, or whatever his name was, Lenin? Maybe it's Butch Ware. Who knows? I listened to a speech he made the other day on the thing, and I thought, wow, this guy's bright. Will he become the governor of California? I bloody well hope so, because maybe we do have to trickle our way up through the corridors of power and through the systems that are extant. Maybe it is very unlikely that we will have our 1917 moment and we'll overthrow the Tsar, or Donald Trump as he's now called. But it's a monarchy, whatever way you look at it. The United States is now a monarchy. It pretends not to be, but it is. Except it's actually an unholy alliance between King John and the barons. So it's Runnymede never happens. It's what Runnymede was supposed to be. And so the rewriting of the laws, and that no man shall be imprisoned, save that, blah, 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 and all that stuff from Runnymede in it was ratified in 1590. It all started at the beginning in 1512, I think. It took them nearly 100 years, Magna Carta, to actually get it written down and for it to become part of a British law. So I don't know, but God, I hope I live long enough to see human rights. Imagine that. Because as I constantly say, whenever I speak or say anything, if we did adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and enshrined it in international law, enforceable by the ICJ or the ICC or somebody, or the United Nations or the whatever, that would be the end of war forever, everywhere. Because if you have universal human rights, you cannot have war, because wars always infringe the human rights of somebody. So it's the end of war, which would be a tragedy for the ruling class in the United States and the UK and Germany and France and all the people who make all the bloody weapons that we use to murder the babies in Gaza with. It would be tragic for them, but wouldn't it be bloody good for the rest of us? Think if we could spend all that money on educating our children or buying eggs and bacon. Jesus. Sorry, Jesus, I didn't mean to take your name in vain.
Romana, I know you have a question. I just wanted to follow up on that because Roger mentions Dr. Butchware. And I'm just, as he is talking, and he mentioned Leopold II earlier, and I was thinking in my mind, well, if we did not have the likes of Elon Musk, we would have not had the likes of Dr. Butchware. Leopold was met with Lubomba and Sankara and Mandela and Guevara and George Habash and the leaders of the Palestinian resistance and Nasrallah and so forth and so on. I mean, the resistance is real. It is there and it's happening. And all of this rage and anger and violence and genocide, it's because it's an answer to the resistance that is very much real and tangible, and it's happening as we speak, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's no question but the resistance is real and that it is happening. But we're not stopping. It's so far, yes, it's happening, and it's very, very heroic, and it's very moving, and it's wonderful. And yes, we're seeing more and more of what Palestinian culture is, and so on and so forth. So we're countering the argument that Palestinians are vermin. No, they're not. These are ancient traditions, and they love their olive trees, and blah blah blah. And it's all good. And yet we're still murdering them all. This is a real genocide. When you look around the corner, it's hard to see anything but just more and more holes in the ground with, blue plastic body bags and bulldozers. And it's hard. You keep looking around and going, well, hang on, where's the war? And it would be so simple. If you got rid of the US veto, which isn't the US veto, this is why I'll be talking about it next Thursday. It was all agreed in Yalta. Stalin and Roosevelt and Churchill all agreed, well, yeah, we'll have a new United, something to replace the League of Nations, but we are not going to lose control of it. So we'll have this thing called the Security Council that's supposed to blah, 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 blah. But we will all have a veto on it so that we can control it completely. This isn't going to be democratic in any way. No. And they said, if you don't agree to that, we're not going to have a United Nations at all. F you. And so everybody else went, all right. So that's what it is. And that's why it's completely dysfunctional. Not completely, because until such times as now, they did make UNRWA. So yeah, awful things happened. 48 happened, the Nakba happened. There's millions and millions of Palestinian refugees, but at least the rest of the people in the world were allowed to give them a crust of bread occasionally. Now they're not even allowed to do that. Because our masters have said, no, UNRWA is a terrorist organization. So I don't know. I can't look round the corner into next month or next year, and neither can you. We can't do it. All we can do is do everything that we can every day to stand on the side of righteousness and to stand on the side of love and truth against hatred and lies. It's a stark choice, but it's a very, very obvious choice. It's not complicated. We all know this. There's nothing complicated about it. So if we, the people, in large enough numbers, make the choice to stand with love and truth, will we be able to exert enough economic, or what pressure could we possibly bring to bear on the Donald and Elon Musk that would make them change their ways? Or the whole cabal, all of them, and stop playing their infantile game of, I'm the bully in the schoolyard and you'll do as you're bloody well told or we'll kill you all, which is what they're doing. However much they want to hide it or sweep it under the rug of Tulsi Gabbard or whatever. No, you can't. She's as nutty as the rest of them. She's another religious maniac. You can't, there's, I don't know. Anyway, who knows? I know I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm going to stand. I'm not going to take a step backwards. If they send me to prison, they send me to prison. And I'm not encouraging that, by the way. I'd just like to say that to the Metropolitan Police. Now, I'm not demanding that you lock me up.
And you actually stood there, despite the fact that you have been repeatedly targeted with false accusation of anti-Semitism. We know that this is a standard tactic, which is used by, pro-Israel Zionist lobby to intimidate critics and distract from the real conversation here. Unfortunately, though, these accusations still carry some weight, especially in academia. So do you think, though, that this tactic is as effective as it was in the past? And also, based on your experience, what is the best way to challenge it, or should it simply be ignored?
Well, it's funny because it's gone like that, hasn't it? Like 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was that moron Polly Sampson, who's married to one of my ex-colleagues, did a Twitter rave calling me an anti-Semite to the depths of my rotten core. I think he's anti-Semitic to the depth of his rotten core. Well, at the time, I can tell you this now. At the time, I asked if I could sue her for defamation because it felt defamatory to me, because it's a complete lie, obviously. I don't have an anti-Semitic cell anywhere in my body. And so I consulted a couple of, they were QCs then, because Her Majesty was still alive, I think. Anyway, Queen's Counsel, and they went, forget it. I went, what? Why? It's obviously defamatory. And they said, yeah, but you'll be tried. This court, if it goes to court, if you sue her for libel, it will be heard in the High Court in London. And I went, yeah. And they said, you will not find a single High Court judge in London who will find for you if you are accused of being an anti-Semite. They've just watched Corbyn go down after, the Panorama programme that John Ware made about anti-Semitism in the Labour. They destroyed the guy who the British public wanted to be their next prime minister. And they did it with consummate ease. You stand No, well, since then things have changed a bit because the mask is off, and they're so obviously committing genocide, supported by Starmer and the rest of those people like that. So I thought that maybe things were changing a bit. Recently, I'm allowed to tell you this now. I haven't been allowed to speak about this for months. I am being sued for libel by John Ware, the execrable pretend journalist who made the Panorama program, Anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then. There was the Ford Commission, this barrister whose job it was, and all kinds of things. And plus, Richard Sanders has made refuting documentaries about Ware and his position. So I am being expected. The first hearing in my case was a couple of weeks ago, and the judge just had to decide whether, when I called him a liar, I was stating fact or expressing an opinion, and also when I said he was an enthusiastic supporter of the genocide of the people of Palestine, whether I was stating fact or expressing an opinion. It was during an interview I did with Al Jazeera, and my position is that I was expressing an opinion. Obviously, my opinion is that it's a fact, but it's a nice point. So the judge came out. So this was in front of one judge. The judge came out and said, when he called him a liar, he was expressing an opinion. But when he said he was supporting the genocide, he was expressing a fact. And I'm thinking, this is such gobbledygook. But they're saying, so what do you want to do? Do you want to withdraw? So I went back and I looked at the letter that I wrote to the Times after the Labour Party apologised to John Ware in the High Court at the end of the Jeremy Corbyn affair, which they did. Okay. And they stood up in court and apologised to John Ware for having called him names and said he was Israeli stooge. And he took the money. Apparently it was about 600 grand they paid. The Labour Party paid him. Well, am I backing off? I want my day or week or 5 weeks or whatever it costs. I don't care what it costs. That's not important. What's important is that John Ware is a liar. And that I only said this after he made a film for the campaign against anti-Semitism, purporting to prove that I'm an anti-Semite. And he had two people that I'd worked in the past, 20 years ago. One was a saxophone player called Norbert, I've forgotten his name, but Norbert somebody or other. And the other was a guy called Bob Ezrin, who was the co-producer on The Wall when I made the Wall record with Pink Floyd back in 1970. Okay, apparently they're both Jewish. I worked with Ezrin for over a year. I have no idea whether I even knew he was Jewish. I'm pretty sure I didn't, because it never, ever, ever crosses my mind whether what somebody's religion is. It's just, that's not the way my brain works. I don't think of it like that. Anyway, why am I, oh yeah. So they said, you won't find a single High Court judge in London who will find for you. So forget it. You just got to swallow it. You cannot use the law to defend yourself against the accusation of anti-Semitism. So that's why I'm looking forward to the next chapters in my fight in court with John Ware. Whatever comes at the end of it, this man needs to be exposed for what he is. And he's an Israeli shill. There you go. Yeah, you can write that down, and you can say that I was suggesting. That's only my opinion, John, by the way, just in case you decide to sue me even more for defamation. But you are, and everybody knows you are. And so these feeble pretenses that you're somehow a journalist and that you're standing up for truth, you're not. You're standing up for Israel's lies, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so. So I'm happy. I'm content to have this fight with you openly in public, because you're wrong, and you are. So anybody who doesn't get up on their hind legs, John Ware, pay attention. If you don't stand up on your high legs and say, I totally and utterly condemn Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people and its occupation of all the land in the West Bank and Gaza since 1967. If you don't do that, you're supporting the genocide. So do it tomorrow, mate. Eh? There's a good lad. I know you won't. But, you know, so that's where, so the fight goes on, and it's a tiny little fight, sort of, for me.
Well, I mean, it's just the representation of this fight. There's so much injustice happening against many academics, intellectuals, journalists, activists, ordinary people who are not able to fight back in court and who are being deported. So a lot of people are going to be paying attention to this. We need such a legal precedent to come and show that this is so much of this is just rubbish. So we need people to stand up, and you're not really standing up for yourself only, but
No.
pretty much for a lot of people around the world, especially in this country. I want to just finish with this question, Roger. Your message to Palestinian artists in Gaza. I mean, you know that every sector, yeah, I don't even see what's the point of counting how many doctors, how many lawyers, how many teachers have been killed in Gaza, because every sector has been destroyed and every group or segment of society has suffered tremendous pain, tremendous loss. And of course, the artists of Gaza, the poets of Gaza, the intellectuals of Gaza. Yet somehow, the content production, the artistic production of Gaza has doubled, tripled since the genocide. They find ways. They don't need studios. They don't need, uh, you know, complex facilities to record. They do it on TikTok, on Instagram, in the streets, on their way back from the south to the north. What do you think is beyond all this cultural resilience in Gaza? And what's your message to them? Because we would really like to translate it to Arabic and make it available. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I think it would mean a lot for people there.
I got an email yesterday from a lady called, what's her name? Hang on. Yeah, this was from somebody called Eleanor Goldfield. Anyway, she's putting on exhibitions of prints from coming out of Gaza now, and wanted to know if I could help in some way. And obviously I will in any way that I can. But one of the things that she sent me is a picture, and it's done by an artist who's called Khalil Khalidi, and 991 is an unidentified child that was brought to me in the ER, critically injured due to an intense carpet bombing of a whole residential block. As I was checking his pulse, he took his last breath. This has been a very recurring scene for the past 200 days, to have humans both injured or dead, labeled as unknown, number, and then a number. 991 isn't the first nor the last child I've witnessed passing away on the cold floors of the hospital, but was no time to send 991's blood samples to the lab as he passed away almost immediately. In his honor, I didn't want his blood to be just thrown away, for his story to never be told, for him to be forgotten. So I decided to preserve his blood samples in a unique way, as paint. 991 is one of 48 children who have passed away in my arms in the past 200 days, still counting. I've become very familiar with that, what the final breath looks like. It's haunting. And then there's this thing which I will send to you so you can use it, because, you know, it's a slightly kind of pre-Raphaelite, whimsical, but very, very beautiful moving drawing of an angel, and it's drawn in number 991's blood. So, Ramsey, here we go. I just sent it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent.
That was a sort of better answer to your question than me trying to talk about it. You know, it's extraordinary how they've carried on working in Gaza through all of this. I'm in constant contact with a Palestinian artist called Malak Matar, who I met in London a few months ago when I went there to do a fundraising charity thing for Al Haq, and I met her during that trip. So we talk quite often, but yeah, it's a head scratcher.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Hey,
Thank you for your unwavering dedication to justice in Palestine and around the world. Really, just the word thank you doesn't do it, but you know it. You know how we feel about your solidarity and what it means to all of us. To all of our viewers, we appreciate you tuning in. As many of you already know, the Palestine Chronicle is heavily censored on social media. The best way to push back against censorship is to engage directly with our content. So please like, share, comment, and follow. From me and my co host, Romana, we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Floodgate. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.